Opposed to many beliefs, delay in marital settlement is not always a bad thing, nor is it necessarily the work of the devil. In some cases, if not most, it is a necessity from the divine. Now, to put that into perspective, today we explore the story of David and Saul, kings of Israel, ordained by God, Saul being the first. As they say, first impressions matter. They don't tell us everything, but they do tell us some things. Especially in a story, the way a character is introduced usually says something about who they are. With that in mind, it is really interesting to see the way the first two kings of Israel are introduced in the biblical narrative, Saul and David. I'd love that you follow this story carefully because ultimately we're talking about marital settlement. Saul was first introduced in 1 Samuel chapter 9. From his story, we see that Saul had no history. He was only introduced by his outward appearance, and we all know that appearance can be deceiving. Compared to David, on the other hand, David was a shepherd boy and a warrior way before he was declared king of Israel. And we're all familiar with this story in the Bible, how Israel didn't have a king and they requested Samuel to ask God to give to them a king. And then God ordained Saul as king. And how Saul later went on, failed and died. Then God raised David to become the king of Israel. Now, the most interesting part of this story is actually captured in the book of Acts, chapter 13, verse 21 to 22. It says, God gave unto them Saul, the son of Kish, a man of the tribe of Benjamin, by the space of 40 years. And when he had removed him, he raised up unto them David to be their king. I'd like you to note the choice of words used here. It says he gave them Saul as king. Then he raised up David as king for them. He gave one, then he raised the other. The determinant of how successful their kingship or rulership or their kingdom was going to last was actually dictated by those two words. He gave one, then the other he raised. You need to understand that when God gives you a man, he gives the man as is. But when God raises a man for you, he builds him up in such a way that he fits into your life and circumstances. So remember how I had mentioned earlier that Saul had no history apart from his appearance, whereas David had a lot of history backing him up before he became king. In today's world, Saul would be considered a ready-made man, like an already-made man, because he came as he was and God ordained him as king and he became king. And that actually showed up in the way he ruled and how he ended. But David, on the other hand, spent a lot of time in the wilderness. God had a time to bring him up, to raise him, to train him, to teach him the art of war, to give him the experiences he had even before he met Goliath and ultimately became king. And this is the same thing in life today. Most times we look at our lives and compare it to other people's and feel like everyone is married except me. But you need to understand that in most of those cases, those people had their Saul, ready-made partners, and you are just still here because God is keeping you, taking his time to build and raise for you a man, a real man, not just a man he gives to you. The question is this: why would God give unto you a partner rather than raising one for you? Because we see a lot of people that have partners. Like, why would God give some people? Meanwhile, he takes his time to raise up a partner for the others, just the same way God is taking his time to raise up a partner for you. Now, the number one reason why God will give a man or give a partner is motive. If you remember in the book of 1 Samuel chapter 8, Israelites wanted to fit in. They wanted to be like the other kingdoms. They wanted to be like the other nations. So they asked God to give unto them a king. So God listened to them and God gave unto them a king, which means if you're desperate enough, God can actually give you what you're asking for, even if it's not his perfect will. Even if that thing is not ready for you, God can actually give it to you because he's our Father. If you pray long enough, God can actually listen to you and give to you, even if that person is not ready, even if you're not ready for a relationship. And this is the primary reason why people go into different relationships. They break up, come out with heartaches, and still come back to God. So if you're praying for a man, if you're praying for a partner from the standpoint of the fact that all your friends are married out of desperation, then it is very possible that God will give to you a man. And trust me, there is no guarantee that that man is going to last, because he wasn't raised by God for you. Please understand that there is no late marriage if you are in the will of God. Try to understand that. There is no late marriage if you are in the will of God. It might be looking like it's taking forever for you to find that right man, for you to find the right woman, for you to get into that right relationship. But I want to encourage you today that God is taking his time to raise for you a man that will stay with you through thick and thin, not just a man that is there when things are rosy. God is taking his time to build up a man for you, a man that will come into your life, that will fit into your life so perfectly well that he makes you happy, he brings you joy. Not just a man that you would have because everyone has a man, but you're sad on the inside. No, Bible says the blessings of God make it rich without adding sorrow. So if God takes his time to raise for you a man, you can stand guaranteed that man, it's not going to break your heart. That man is not going to fail you. You can stand sure of the fact that God is giving you his best and not just answering your prayer because you're desperate. So most times when we're praying for marital settlement, most people pray from the angle of desperation. And God being our Father, he can actually provide for you that which you're asking. I would like to encourage you to seek God with an open heart and try not to be desperate. God is working on that man. God is working on that woman. God is working on the perfect person, and he's going to provide them to you when the time is right. Make sure you don't compare yourself with other people, because remember the book of 1 Samuel chapter 8. Because Israel compared themselves to other nations was why they requested God to provide them a king, and he gave to them. Eventually, when that king failed, the Bible recorded that God then raised a king for them. I pray that God grants you the courage and strength to wait on him, for him to provide for you that which he has in store for you. And that's it for today. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe so you never miss out on future content. And if you found value in today's discussion, please leave a review. It helps others discover this podcast. Thank you very much. Stay blessed.